Hello friends, John Dalton here for the Emergence podcast where you and I go into love, consciousness and the mystery. And in this episode we're going into how to get not freaked out by the news or how to engage with the news more consciously. We're going into genius, rest, magic, power, not being liked, changing your world, meditation, joy, unconsciousness, kindness and strength. Now, there's been a lot in the news this week, and it's really easy to get sucked into the news. So what I do to help for that not to happen is I do my best to go to the deepest truth that I can see in the situation. And it nearly always goes back to what I think of as AI, not artificial intelligence, but artificial ignorance. And artificial ignorance is this huge thing that is out of control and we don't know how to stop. And every issue goes back to it. It doesn't matter what the issue is. And, a really simple way of thinking about it is nobody wants climate crisis. Nobody wants it at all, including the people who are actively engaged in activities that are perpetuating and accelerating climate change. They don't want it either, which on the surface doesn't make any sense. But if you follow the logic all the way back, it'll be profits. Profits will be to do with growth. Growth will be to do with what? Why do we have to keep growing? It's like, well, we just have to, because we have created this unconscious thing that we're feeding into. The way you listen to people talk about the market, the stock market, or the market as it's called, and you get a sense of it. It's like they're talking about it like it's a dragon or some mystical creature, Nobody can predict what it's going to do. Nobody can tell how it's going to react to something, but we all have to keep putting things into it. We have to keep growing. We have to keep feeding it. And it all comes down to individuals, but it's like the individual displacement of unconsciousness. Really simple example, very familiar to everybody is you've had a lovely night, you've had some beautiful food, you had some friends over, you've laughed, you've had a great conversation, maybe you all watched a movie together, then maybe you had a few more drinks, it was brilliant, everyone's gone, you're turning off the lights, getting ready for bed, and then you walk into the kitchen and you realize you haven't cleaned the kitchen, you haven't done the dishes. You're like, and then there's that moment where you go, do I want to switch gears and get into cleaning the kitchen? Some people like to do that, but a lot of people go, you know what, I'll do it in the morning, particularly if you've had a few drinks. I'll do it in the morning. So looked at clinically, you could say you've deferred dealing with the consequences to a later date. Okay. Now, collectively, we have been doing that for hundreds of years. We have been deferring dealing with certain things, things like interest on money. And then money itself and the way money works, the stock market, I'll get a little bit of your enterprise. You do all the work. I'll just give you a bit of money. And then when you make some money, when you make some profit, I'll get a bit of that because I don't want to work so hard. I want to, And like everyone's doing that now. Everybody's involved in the stock market. It's like you're kind of considered a bit clever. If you are, have some stocks, have a good portfolio, you can talk about all of that stuff, And like for all my life, it's probably been the same with you, particularly if you listen to me, I felt like there's something wrong with the world. When I was young, I thought there was something wrong with me. But as I've got older, I've realized, oh no, there's nothing wrong with me. The world, there's a fundamental problem in the world. It's as if we get up in the morning after the beautiful dinner party and instead of cleaning the dishes, we move house. And we've been moving houses ever since. And now there's this big collective conglomeration of dirty dishes floating around like a big crust around us, consuming everything. And we don't know how to stop it. And it's not dirty dishes, it's unconsciousness. We've just kicked the can down the road so many times, I like flying to Portugal, I like to get on a plane and fly to Portugal. I'll deal with the consequences later. I want a good return on my money. I'm getting on a bit. And, I've worked hard. Now I've got a bit of money. I'm going to invest it in the stock market so I can get a good return. I'll deal with the consequences later. The consequences is the fact that all the companies that I'm investing in are destroying everything. Okay. And the people who work for those companies, they don't want everything destroyed, but they want to work, and they want, there's a point at which you hit into this unconsciousness thing, over and over again. Dividends, war. You look at war and you go, oh my God, that's terrible. But you go follow it on, and there's companies that make the armaments. They've got to make profits. They have to make profits because we have to keep growing. We have to keep growing because, clang, you're right up against the big unconscious thing again, So with whatever shocking thing you see in the news, it doesn't matter what it is. If I follow it back, I'll get to that. I'll get to that thing. So that's important. And it's like, well, okay, that's great, John. Now I'm fully depressed. We're all at the mercy of a big unconscious thing. It's good news for you, because you and me, because you can't deal with unconsciousness globally. There's no global solution for unconsciousness. It has to be done individually. And that means you and me, which is great, because then all our work on our consciousness is helping to dissolve that big detached unconsciousness that is floating around. Because the more people become more conscious, it will begin to create a cascade of consciousness that will go through that big layer of unconsciousness. And we're getting very close. And we're getting close because all the cans we've kicked down the road are finally hitting up against a wall, and everything is starting to fall apart. And that's shocking and terrible and awful. But that world that I knew was broken, and that is broken, in the process of it getting fixed, the brokenness becomes more apparent. I've had lots of experience of working with lots of people over the years, 30 years. And in the process of things releasing, disharmonies, restrictions, doesn't matter what you call it, but in the process of disharmony going into harmony, as that happens, there can be vibrations, there can be tears, there can be shaking, there can be all sorts of eruptive kind of feelings as things begin to release. And that's kind of what we're seeing now. Things are starting to break down as we are facing the possibility of disharmony coming into harmony. So then I come into action. And what I mean by that is I don't let my mind mess with me about what I'm seeing. So I see something either on my news feed, or if I watch TV, or I watch news on the TV, which I don't. But, like generally if something big is happening, you'll hear about it. So I'll see something and I'll react to it. I'll feel terrible. I'll feel heartbroken. I might weep for the people. Okay. Then there's a cyclical nature to it. The way they talk about the news cycle? It mirrors what goes on inside us. We can, have a reaction grief, and then we want to watch the next news clip, and the next news clip, and the next news clip. I don't let that happen. Okay. And I don't let that happen in the same way as I don't let my mind think for the sake of thinking. So, for example, if I'm lying in bed at night and I'm about to drift off to sleep and my mind goes, did I lock the car? I go, yes, I'm pretty sure I locked the car. And I start to drift off again, and then I think, because it would be really annoying if I didn't. And I woke up in the morning and the car was gone. And I'm going, I know I locked. I'm very, 90% sure I lock it every night. I'm sure it's locked. And then my mind will go, but really? And I go, okay. Then I make a general announcement. I go, I'm not having any more of this thinking about this thing. I'm either going to take action, or I'm going to stop thinking and go to sleep. So one more thought about whether I locked the car or not. And I am going to get up, get dressed, go downstairs, go out into the cold, and check if I locked the car. And then I usually fall asleep. Okay. But if I do, I've done this enough times with myself, and I have gone down and checked, I won't let my mind mess with me like that. It's not good for my mind. It's not good for me. It's the same with when I see something shocking on the news. I go, right, now let me just check in with myself about what I am moved to do. And it's very important not to judge and to give myself the freedom to genuinely, honestly, looking in the mirror, just me and me, what am I moved to do about this? Am I moved to go and volunteer to help? Am I moved to send food, clothing, medication? Am I moved to organize fundraisers? Am I moved to send money? Am I moved to write to people? The hardest one to face is, you know what? I'm not moved to do anything. And to face that with no judgment, because accepting that different people have different configurations, one path is not better than another path. The path of action is not better than the path of not taking action. The main thing is that you're facing what's actually happening inside you, which means you're becoming more conscious. Because often, like my mind at night, I will misidentify feeling bad as an action, of posting on social media as an action, of talking to other people about how upset I am about something that I have no intention of taking. I know I'm not going to take any action on it, but if I say how upset about it I am, then that's kind of an action. It's not. And if I'm very clear-eyed about that, then I've contained a lot of my energy. It doesn't leak away in all these things that don't lead to any kind of action. Then I look at my inner state. I look at, why am I compulsively wanting to look at the news? I look at, do I have a feeling of survivor guilt, a version of survivor guilt, where I feel bad about having a good life because other people are suffering, which when I follow that line of thinking through, like whenever I have been suffering, the first thing I thought was never, well, I wish someone else was suffering as much as me. I never think that, Whenever I'm suffering, I'm like, this is awful. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I always have that. Now, I'm not saying everyone thinks like that, but that's the way I think, and I suspect that's the way you think as well. So similarly, if you know other people are suffering, you can be sure that they wouldn't want you to suffer if you're not. When I look at other people, or I hear of other people suffering, I go, well, I don't think they would want me to suffer if I'm not suffering. And me making myself suffer is not helping them or me in any way. And these are hard things to face on the inside, but they help bring me back into my direct experience and what's actually happening for me. And I look around and I look at the things that are good in my life and I go, this is what's actually happening right now for me. This is my beautiful partner. This is my beautiful pet. This is my beautiful home. These are my beautiful children. This is the beautiful sunshine. This is the beautiful food I have. These are the lovely clothes I have. Coming into what is good that's in front of me, while facing what I moved to do, facing where the different horrible thing that's come across the news to me has come from, the origin of it, and knowing that being more conscious is the most helpful thing I can do for myself and for everybody else. Feel free to write to me if you are so inclined. I love hearing from you, how it's all going, how good your life is. If you've got problems, feel free to write to those if you want a different perspective on them. John@furtheremergence.com. Recommendations for this week is a book I recommend. It's called Existential Kink, and it's by Carolyn Elliott. The subtitle of it is Unmask Your Shadow and Embrace Your Power, a method for getting what you want by getting off on what you don't. Here's a little extract from the audiobook of Carolyn.
I learned firsthand that by embracing my psychic masochism, by recognizing and empowering the darkness of my shadow, and in the end taking pleasure in my yucky stuff, that I could do something amazing. I could completely integrate my good self with my bad self and become a whole person, healed. Applying this insight to my own life, I found I rapidly dissolved patterns of poverty, bad relationships, and health and creativity problems that had plagued me for over a decade. This insight is what's involved in shadow work, and it's not for the faint of heart. However, this insight is rarely discussed in pop psychology and self-help books, which tend to focus on love and light, repeated affirmations, visualizations, positivity, etc. And many people are frustrated when this approach does not produce results. What I had learned, and what Existential Kink teaches, is that the key to a magical life rests in delving into the other end of the spectrum, finding the power of the darkness.
Now, the darkness she's talking about is our shadow, looking into your shadow. Have you signed up for my friendly notes? I send out friendly notes every Sunday. If you'd like to get one, go to the website, furtheremergence.com, and I will send you one every Sunday. I have what's becoming a sort of a progression in trainings. I've got the meditation training, which leads to the navigating the psychic world training, and then I'll be starting the space for the mystery, which isn't a training as such. It is a recurring space for being trained by the mystery, I suppose, but facilitated by me. So if you're interested in progressing, growing your consciousness, go to the website, furtheremergence.com, look up training. Now, let's have a look at the memes. The memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. First one is a quote by Arthur Schopenhauer, who says, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." I found that to be true. If you've ever known any geniuses, and you know, some of them are very public, and just what they do, it's like, where did that come from? It just comes out of nowhere. Whereas everyone else is like trying to be a better version of something that a previous genius has done, and then some, you know, genius comes along and just does something that's so out of the blue, so original, you just go, wow, that's amazing. And geniuses are fantastic because they just move everything forward. It's great. Next one I did right, it says, "It can wait. Rest. You've done enough for now. Rest. Be kind to yourself and rest." We don't rest enough. We really don't. I'm the same. I work too hard. I get caught up in the momentum, and just, you know, it's almost like I want to paper the walls with little reminders to rest, because we've had this work ethic inculcated into us that that we're naturally lazy. We're not naturally lazy. We're naturally very intelligent. You know, if you look at animals in the wild, they rest. They know how to rest. I've got 2 little dogs, and they rest. That's their job, you know. Like, I joke with them as I'm going up to do my work. I go, okay, I'm going to go and see my first person. I'm going to do that. You just lie on your job is to lie on the couch and rest. And in some ways, I think they're more intelligent. So, rest. That's the message. Speaking of one-to-one work, that was the next one that came along. It's a picture that I've come across, and it just really reminded me of the way I see people when I do my one-to-one work with them. The one-to-one work is pretty much borderline magic. I don't really know how it works. I was trained as a craniopsychotherapist. I worked as a craniopsychotherapist for a long time. I still work as a craniopsychotherapist. I just don't see the people in person. I work with people all around the world, and they get better. How does that work? I don't really know, but I know that it does work, and that in the process of working with someone, when I chat with them on Zoom, then there's a point when I do the work, they lie down, and then I close my eyes and I pull back, and I meet them behind the scenes. I meet them in the mystery, and sometimes they're represented to me visually. And this picture, when I saw it, I was like, wow, that's the way I see people. So what I say is, working with someone across the vast distance, which is an illusion, we connect in mind and heart and spirit. In that connection, miracles are born. With my eyes closed, this is often how they look to me. And it's true. Now, I see lots of other things when I'm working. It doesn't always look like this, but the fact that you can kind of see the brain and the brain structures, and because of my training, craniopsychal training, I'm pretty good on anatomy and physiology. I can see things, and I can turn them around, and I can see where they're stuck, and I can help them release. So this image just really reminded me of that. Next one is a quote from Charlie Chaplin. Slightly controversial figure, but we'll put that to one side. He says, you need power only when you want to do something harmful. Otherwise, love is enough to get everything done. Now, that's one of those things that I'm talking about. Of like, that's true. Anyone who sort of says differently is wrong. It's part of that unconscious thing that's floating around, Love is enough to get everything done. It's like, yeah, things are complicated and complex. But if you keep coming back to what you know in your heart, you can dismantle all the unconscious stuff around it, the complexity that is built into all this unconsciousness, and just come back to love is enough to get everything done. Let's keep going till we get to that. I didn't write the next one, but it's pretty good. It says, you absolutely have to become okay with not being liked. No matter how loving or kind you are, you will never people please your way into collective acceptance. You could be a whole ray of sunshine and people will hate you because they're used to the rain. Be okay with shining regardless. This is easy to read and easy to write, very hard to do. For lots of reasons. At a very base level, we are hardwired to want people to like us. Because if they don't like us, our tribal hardwiring knows that if we're excluded from the tribe, we won't survive. So there's that. We have to recognize that and work with that. And then childhood conditioning, all sorts of things. It's very deeply ingrained in us to want everybody to like us. So taking that part of us gently by the hand and explaining that rarely is it personal that people don't like you. It's often it has to do with them. And not everyone is going to like you. Not because you're not likable, it's just a numbers thing. And it's feedback, but it's feedback to be taken, and then you look at it and you go, okay, they said I was X, Y, and Z. Is that true? I can't see it. Or, yeah, maybe X, but not Y and Z. I'll work on X, Y, and Z. Don't see it. Okay. And then to let it go and to focus on the people that do like you. Because, you can't get everyone to like you, but it's amazing how many people do like you. Next one I didn't write, but it's very good. It says, change your thoughts and you change your world. Now, that is about subjective, your reality. And that your reality is very much created by what you think. And what you think, oftentimes, it's mostly your unconscious thinking. And you make your unconscious thinking conscious by focusing on it, by meditating, by allowing it to percolate to the surface. And the more it does that, the more you see. And the more you see, the more you can change and edit and curate as in what suits you and what works for you. You can let it go. But it is true. The more you change your thoughts, the more you change your world. Next one I didn't write, but I love putting it up, particularly when I'm running a meditation training. It says, meditation, it's better than sitting around doing nothing. Which, when you think about it, is hilarious because meditation is sitting around doing nothing, but it's a very active nothing. And I suppose it isn't really doing nothing because you're very focused on turning off the pictures, turning off the sound, going into the mystery. But from the outside, it just looks like you're sitting around doing nothing. So it's funny. I did write the next one. It says, there's wisdom in joy. This is a bit like a Zen koan for me because I had a flash of insight about it. It was like, yeah, there is a lot of wisdom in joy. Because you don't not necessarily associate wisdom with joy. Joy can seem a bit euphoric, a bit fluffy, a bit la-la. It's like wisdom. Wisdom is serious and heavy and, it's wisdom. Let me give you some wisdom here. It's like there's wisdom in joy. And it's like when you get into pure joy, not trying to escape, not trying to, laugh everything off, not trying to force yourself to be happy, but genuinely when you connect with joy, when you make a focus on joy, and you make a focus on the fact that there is joy in me if I look for it, not manufacture it, but look for it. And often, like, pure joy is in such simple things, you just see something, whether it's a blade of grass or something that your dog might do or something might pass you by on the street, somebody does something, and it just is there. It just comes up on you in this joy. And as you do that and you focus, you experience it more, and then you begin to see the wisdom of it, that generally powerful things are done lightly. Big, powerful shifts happen in very light ways. You kind of think you have to sort of be like Atlas and pick up the whole thing and move it. But often it wants to move, and you can access that wanting to move by accessing the lightness in you. And the lightness in you is in the joy that's already in you. Okay, not so much of a Zen koan. I actually knew what I was talking about there. Next one I didn't write, but it's very good. It's called Hanlon's Razor. It's a theoretical or philosophical device, and it says, never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. And you could replace stupidity with unconsciousness. And it's very helpful when you feel yourself getting pulled into conspiracy theories of like, oh my God, this person is behind this and them, and there's these super clever people who are trying to control the world. That is not to say that there are people who are trying to control the world. There are always people trying to control the world, But the feeling of, there's this very big cleverness going on. This is a very helpful thing to come back to not attribute malice to that which can adequately be explained by stupidity. It's kind of counter the whole devil idea, that there's this malevolent, clever, intelligent force that's just out to try and destroy things. In my experience, I haven't experienced it yet. I'm 60 years old. I haven't experienced it yet. That's not to say it's not there. I just haven't experienced it. And I've come across lots of people who have had all sorts of terrible things done to them. Some people who have done terrible things. And I haven't yet looked in someone's eyes and seen that thing that is supposed to be evil or is supposed to be the devil. All I've seen is unconsciousness. Varying degrees of unconsciousness. And this is a good thing to come back to not attribute malice. Because malice, the idea of attributing malice engenders fear in you, which is your unconsciousness rises up, because fear is very much from our unconsciousness and rises up to meet it. If you come back to, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity or unconsciousness. Didn't write the next one, but it's very true and helpful. Today you could be talking to someone who is trying their best not to fall apart. So whatever you do today, do it with kindness in your heart. I have these regularly because you just need to keep reminding us, everyone looks so normal. Everyone looks like they've got their act together. They're not. As I say, I do lots of work with people one-to-one, and they pop up on the screen and they, you could pass them in the supermarket, you could pass them in the shops, you could pass them on the street. And yet when they get talking within 5 minutes, you realize how heavy the burden of sorrow that they're carrying, or how heavy the burden of the wounds that they're carrying, And it's everybody. Everybody's got it going on. So that's why I encourage everyone to be kind. Encourage you to be kind, encourage me to be kind to yourself, be kind with other people. Just assume everybody's going through it, because they are. Didn't write this one, but it's very good. It says, be proud of how you've been handling these last few months. And you could replace months with days or weeks or seconds sometimes. The silent battles you've fought, the moments you've had to humble yourself, the times you've wiped your own tears. Celebrate your strength. It's another one. You can't hear enough of this kind of stuff. Because we discount our feelings, we discount our courage, we discount the incredible feats of kindness that we show to ourselves and to other people. We just focus on when we lost our temper or when we snapped at somebody or all the things we got wrong. But it's so helpful to remember this, to celebrate your strength, to celebrate your courage, to celebrate your nobility. I know I do. I celebrate your courage and your strength. I see it. I see what you're doing. Well done. All right, that's all I've got for you this time. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.